Flipping the Pyramid. www.flippingthepyramid.co.uk. We aim to discover the truth about our world and the issues it faces.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello folks and welcome to Ecstatic Zen.
Ecstatic Zen.
Ecstatic Zen.
Ecstatic Zen.
Hopefully, between the two of us we can spread a bit more ecstatic Zen.
Instead of just the normal kind.
Yeah, that's a combination of positive reflection. Let's put it that way.
Go with the flow. You didn't even tell these people who we are, if they don't know already.
Okay, I am the HairyCookieMunster, simply because, I'm very hairy. And with me is...
Adonis King.
Yes.
The king of Adon, I guess. I don't know. People who know me, and people who don't know me yet.
Not yet, but hopefully there'll be quite a few people listening who are probably very regular listeners of yours. I'm sure they're well aware. You have done a great job of promoting this idea before we actually got round to pulling our fingers out and getting together to get on with it.
Well, I didn't spend all those years in marketing for nothing.
Okay, so we want to try and do something that's a bit more open. Certainly, yes, here is a warning. We will more than likely get into aspects that are spiritual or esoteric, possibly ask you to question yourselves about faith and such matters. Therefore, if you're really, really not interested in that kind of stuff, you might as well stop listening now.
Yeah, stop listening now. You have been warned. Yes,
that's the only warning we're going to give you, because we would like to have a conversation where we're not attempting to deliberately frame it to suit a particular audience. We
don't have an agenda. We don't even know what it is if there is one. We just want the freedom to be able to speak our hearts fully and completely and in a great way that hopefully helps people. I hope this helps people to open up more. We need that.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's something we can sort of start on. I feel it in a similar way, helping people to be a bit more compassionate with each other, because a lot of the problems are basically coming down to that choice between fear and love, aren't they? And
it's basic.
In that way, obviously, we're all afraid in one way or another. I certainly am not perfect. There's no way I'm going to be a hypocrite and say, do as I say and not as I do, etc. I've got fears. I try and work on those fears. I try and get through those fears. And I think a lot of the problem is that people are afraid to be compassionate. They're afraid to be empathic.
Well, they also have the media making them fearful. I mean, we have so much media out there and information coming into us that almost feels built to establish fear, because fear to me is a motive. It is a motivator. It's kind of like the stick. Love is a carrot and fear is a stick. They both motivate. But what do you want to be motivated into? Like, for instance, religion. A lot of people get into religion because of fear. And their whole religious or spiritual conviction is based upon this paradigm that somehow, if they don't follow a certain path, then this horrible thing will occur to them. I mean, in most cases, you're hearing about hell and, brimstone and all of the horrible things. And to me, it's always felt like if that were the way that is real, then God would be a meanie, because it's kind of like saying, I'm going to put a gun to your head, and if you don't become my friend and love me as I love you, I'll pull the trigger. And not only that, but it'll keep going off forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And that's just sad. I mean, that's not the way that people should be motivated to have a spiritual connection, in my opinion.
Yeah. I also I agree with you on that, and I'd also add in that I find it very difficult to accept that a God that is a creator, I'm using the word God loosely, I think you'll understand what I mean and why, a creator who is bringing things into existence, that to me is could only be defined as an act of love because he's creating something. Why would he then want to torment it? The two do not logically go together for me. I know there's a lot of logical, philosophical arguments around the topic, but I just find it very difficult to even entertain the concept that such a creator would actively want to do something like that. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, and I understand, but then I guess I'm going to take the, in some cases when we're talking, I think I'll take and we're developing this show, folks, so we're kind of winging it today, so bear with us. But if I took the oppositional stand to that, I would ask a question that a lot of, atheists have often asked me is, well, if God's so good, why is there this evil? Where did this come from?
Mm-hmm. The classic problem of evil.
Exactly. Where does evil come from if God is so good? And, my thing, of course, that I say is, well, there's elements to this, first of all, that we in our little 3D human brains are going to have problems understanding because we're like children in a sandbox. Even at our most spiritually endowed self, we still have this understanding that we don't know everything. And we're learning. And that even as much as we can learn, our brains aren't even fully developed. What is it that we only use a small percentage of our total brain?
I do know what you mean, but I do debate that meme slightly. It's been around for quite a while, the common sort of thread of, we only use a certain percentage of our brain. If we could activate all the rest, we'd be, super beings. Your consciousness, your mind, this is like taken from neurological studies and such like that, because you know me, I like to look at science stuff.
Go ahead, I'm just chat, man. Go.
Consciousness doesn't actually need to access every part of your brain at once for it to do what it does. So your sentience, your sentience is active and doing its thing without 100% of your brain needing to be lit up. I mean, this a little bit for me in a way connects to something we sort of mentioned. I'm not sure if you mentioned it earlier, the flow of things, and to bring that topic in as well. For me,
I think it's an important topic.
It comes down to that. You are I view it as being a transmuter of energy, and that transmutation process is the flow that you're talking about. So in the process of your sentience being what it is, it requires a certain amount of this energy to flow through to create this conscious sentient being that can question, why am I a conscious sentient being? So in that respect, you are flowing from one thing into another, and that for me can be linked into the very, dogmatically scientific quantitative side of everything, of the electro-firing of neurons and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But really,
I understand. We're really talking about something much deeper, because what we're talking about, and I see where you're going with this, is that our spiritual self utilizes the brain. It's our physical tool for understanding and comprehending the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
But the real us, the cognitive self, I see as more, there would be people that would argue that your consciousness is an illusion caused by the chemicals in your brain. Well, my feeling is that the consciousness comes from something much deeper that allows me to know that I exist beyond just a chemical reaction. And this could be argued. I understand that. And when you were talking about flow, one of the things I wanted to point out is that according to, here's Wiki, I use it every once in a while, just pull it up and look, but I think it gives good thoughts, like anything else. Pull from it what you can. Flow is the mental state of operation in which a person in an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and success in the process of the activity or transformation, as you were saying. Proposed, and it goes into the whole theory of it and so forth. But just the idea the fact, and here's some components of it. Let me just go through those real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Clear goals. Expectations and roles are discernible, and goals are attainable and aligned appropriately with one's skill set and ability. So you flow, Moreover, the challenge level and skill level should both be high. 2, concentrating. A high degree of concentration on a limited field of attention, or a person engaged in the activity will have the opportunity to focus and to delve deeply into it. 3 would be a loss of feeling of self-consciousness, the merging of action and awareness. Action with awareness fades into action alone. The next one would be distortion or sense of time. One's subjective experience of time is altered. This is all components of flow that we're going through here, so because we're halfway through. Direct and immediate feedback is the next component of flow. The successes and failures in the course of the activity are apparent so that the behavior can be adjusted as needed. 6 is the balance, which I also believe something we probably will delve into a lot here, between ability level and challenge. 7 would be the sense of personal control over the situation or activity. 8, the activity is intrinsically rewarding so that there is an effortlessness to the action. That's how I feel about, by the way, doing radio and stuff. There seems to feel a flow to it. I don't feel it's real hard for me. I just do it. I talk. I'm a big mouth. It's natural for me. Number 9, a lack of awareness of bodily needs to the extent that one can reach a point of great hunger or fatigue without realizing it. How many of us have ever been in that? We get in the moment, and it's like you just go through and you go, wait, where did all that time go? And you weren't hungry or nothing. And then the last one here is absorption into the activity, narrowing the focus of awareness down to the activity itself, action awareness merging. Action with awareness fades into action alone. And you need not, not all are needed for flow to be experienced, it does say down here. So I think that's very interesting. I mean, when you start thinking about how we transmute things, as you were saying, we take our energy, we focus it into an activity. My God, this is activism.
Yes.
Activism. Being active and loving it. I mean, if you don't love what you're doing, why are you doing it?
Well, let's link this into the ecstatic Zen.
I'm ecstatic. Ecstatic Zen. I have to do it once. Ecstatic Zen. We need a fragrance, don't we? I think it's.
I'm not sure it'd sell very well though.
It makes you feel in the flow. Anyway, go ahead, brother.
Humor's important. For me, reading about Zen and Buddhism, it became, I was going to say apparent to me that it's a bit difficult concept to explain, but the thought itself focused more and more such that I realized it was the focus of thought that gave you that, how can you describe it? It's the singularity point where the transmutation takes place. You have this flow of energy coming in like a cone that gets tighter and tighter. The funnel, the spiral gets tighter and tighter until you hit that singularity point when it starts to then go opposite and go outwards, like the classic example we see throughout the universe from all the astronomical evidence that is shown to us again and again, from the layout of atoms to the layout of galaxies, etc. They all have very, very similar patterns to them. And I felt more and more that is what Zen is talking about. That was what Zen was really geared towards as a school of thought, was to point you towards that infinitely fine point of focus that becomes your center. And the closer and closer you get to it, the more still and quiet all the other chaos becomes. That's a good example of meditative technique.
Well, people say you lose yourself in the project. People have actually used it. You lose yourself into it, which means it's kind of like what they're talking about there, I believe, where it's saying that, there's a point at which, I'm trying to go back to it here, that the action with awareness fades into action alone. So, I mean, been in things where I know I've not only lost sense of time, especially in artistic projects, like artists know that what I'm talking about. You get this buzz going that feels so good, but it's about getting this thing done. And it's to focus into the activity to the point that you literally seem to become one with that activity.
Yes, exactly. Why do you think, and I often point this out to people, why do you think that in Buddhism, and especially in Zen, there are many different paths to enlightenment, and some of them, quite a few of them actually, rely on very simplistic physical tasks, such as raking gravel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and these monks who deliberately dedicate their time to this effort, obviously, they spend years, day after day, hour after hour, creating these intricately fine, perfected patterns, and it's to give them that focus of thought, because they are going into a repetitive state in their physical body, so it becomes very subconscious what they do with their physical body, and they fine-tune it down and down and down until they can get that pinnacle point of focus, and that's where they're looking for their doorway to enlightenment, if you call it that, stealing from the kind of Hinduistic aspects of it.
We're getting deep. I love it. This is what I needed. A little bit of spiritual communication.
This is the ecstatic level of it, though, isn't it? When you get to that level of activism that is or can be defined as being on such a quantum scale, i.e. you're realizing the activism going on within your own mind.
I and the Guy Fawkes mask are one. Seriously, it's sort of like the Neo character. If you become one with that idea of being, chosen in your own way to carry out a duty or mission. Now, yours is probably different than anybody else's. You alone cannot be Neo. There is no one set person who is the Neo. But every single person can take on a portion of that, and what I've noticed is it's a sort of there's something going on, an interconnecting going on right now, where people are becoming sort of they felt that. I mean, I think most people who went to go see the Matrix movie felt sort of a connection to that, in some way with the Neo character. Many of us, I know, I felt I'd already gone through an experience of feeling chosen in some way to do something in my own unique way, and because I went through this experience, when I saw the movie, it blew me away because it mirrored on the screen not exactly. I mean, I didn't find myself in a pod and suddenly have something attached to the back of my head, and I didn't go in and fight some guy in a room where I flew, But I did have sort of, if you take it and you moved it into I guess you'd call it the Jungian archetypical look at it.
Yep.
It meshed exactly with what I was feeling, where I was at, how society now looked to me, because I saw the machine, and I immediately felt like, wow, I didn't like the us or them feeling I got from that, because I'd been so used to living in a certain pattern of what was expected. For instance, you get up for work, you go to work, you make your money, you go buy some stuff, you go home, you eat, you sleep. Then you wake up and you repeat this over and over, and maybe every once in a while you get a day off.
Yeah.
And that they want to be your pattern. And as we were talking about patterns earlier, because with flow, there's always when you think of a river flowing, it has a certain pattern flow. It goes a certain direction. Every once in a while, something blocks it, and then it has to divert itself. Yep. You end up with a new pattern flow. My father was telling me that my grandfather had some land in Eugene, Oregon, and the Willamette River was coming down, and one year somebody diverted the flow, and it went and flooded all of his land. And to this day, part of his land, I guess it used to, well, he doesn't have it anymore, but is covered with this new river. And the old flow, where the old flow went, is now dry. So the Willamette River took a new little turn where it had not taken a turn before. And this is something that I think, too, when we block people from the flow, realize a person in the flow will flow around. I say be love a lot. Well, I got that from Bruce Lee, where he said be water. And to me, water symbolically has always had sort of a message of love behind it. We're in the age of Aquarius and all that. Anyway, so the thing that I've noticed, and I noticed this in the supermarket today, I was talking to you about before the show, I mentioned this to you, that I was in the market, And I noticed this flow, how it could work. I was getting into the flow, but then I realized that there were people standing in my way of what the natural flow was. Mm-hmm. And there were people stopping, and people were actually blocking each other and pushing people. Some people were trying to go fast, and some people, if everyone stayed within a certain flow that is natural to us, I don't think we would have so many problems with disease, and mental especially, and all of these things, because when we have to divert our flow, it causes a disturbance in the force.
Yes,
and we have to move our flow.
Yeah.
And I think part of the challenge is once you get into the flow is staying in the flow and keeping it to a point where you don't dislike the rocks that fall in the water, because it's easy. I know myself, I used to go through this and didn't even know what I was experiencing, and these people would be in the way. I'd be like, get the hell out of my way, But my whole demeanor on this has changed, and now I see things more from the standpoint of I want to love them. So even though they're the rock in the river, I still want to give them a hug as I go by.
Well, love encompasses, doesn't it? And so does water. You drop a rock into water, and the water will encompass the rock and absorb it. Not literally break it down, but, envelop it. I was going to say, in terms of, like, your story about the supermarket, in my usual fashion of, making these very leaping connections, but to try and add it into that idea of energy flow, we're all frequencies, we're all vibrational frequencies of energy. That's basically what we are. According to all the best minds that have looked at this kind of stuff, that's what we are. When we're existing inside an environment that is made up of lots of other similar frequencies, you are not physically in the same place as me at the moment, but you know what I mean. We are both physical and energy entities. The physicality is based on.
Well, we're energy to most of the people listening to this, because we're sound energy, we're sound waves at the moment. We're recording this ahead of time, so what you're hearing now is actually our future.
Yes, indeed, and even more so in this kind of environment, we're definitely frequencies.
That's what all you can be on the internet. Most of you I know as your frequency.
When frequencies clash up against each other, it just creates a cacophony, it creates noisy chaos. Whereas when frequencies flow around and harmonize with each other, we get what we would, typically call, to the human ear, we'd say, oh yeah, that's a nice sound, that sounds right, we enjoy that, it sounds nice. I think in the same manner, all of existence has this kind of balanced relationship. And when you clash, all you're doing is creating problems for yourself. You can go and look at this from a sort of faith-based point of view, of looking at it from the angle of karma. The common cliche of what you give out comes back, etc. But if you try...
Usually multiplied, too. So if you give out hate, you're going to get, like, at least 3... I mean, some faiths say 3, some faiths say 7 times back. I don't care what it is. It's worse than whatever it is you did.
Yes. If you apply the kind of perspective I'm talking about, where you view it as a flow of energy, somebody who is very narcissistic or aggressive or selfish, however you want to define what would normally be called bad behavior, is trying to get their flow to come into themselves twice, if that makes sense. They're
psychic vampires.
Yes, exactly. They're taking in all the energy from their environment, plus they're saying, oh, it's all for me, it's all for me. So they're trying to do it twice over. And at the same time, they are forcing away all the other frequencies that they are interacting with through their aggression and violence and all the other aspects that come along with it. Mm-hmm. Whereas somebody who is going with the creative flow that the law of nature seems to show to us constantly, the law of nature is quite happy with this flow. It creates things grow, things develop, the cycle of life continues, etc. There you can see that flow, that transmutative flow, going in quite a natural fashion, the way we would expect from, beginning through and out to the end. So it's not only taking in, it's giving back to the environment that it exists within. In one way or another, that energy hasn't gone anywhere. It's stayed within the existence. All that's occurred is this particular pattern that has developed within the existence has transmuted the energy from one form into another and then back again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, everything is cycles and circles anyway. This is what people have, I think, forgotten, especially in a European society, which we're both, though we're on different sides of the pond, we both are European society. So we both have linear thinking as the defined method of thinking within our culture. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and end. That's it. Is more or less what the Western thought has on it. But almost every other culture I've read about defines time and everything by cycles. That's why even you look at the 2012 clock everybody talks about, it's a circle, right? Yeah. You look at your own clock on a wall, it's a circle. Yeah. You look at the things that are happening around you, and you'll start to notice, especially now at my age, you know, by the time this makes air, I'll probably be 51. But but for the moment, I'm 50. Excuse me. And in this time, that's the thing that I noticed more. So I think after 2 20-year periods, I noticed it more because there seems to be a 20-year cycle that one can pretty much count on. You see it in fashion. Because every 20 years you can get that old suit or clothes or whatever out, and it's now hip again.
Well, a sociologically defined generation is 20 years, I believe. So the 20 or 25 years. So a generation, normally you see a new fashion and new cultural media and styles usually change with each generation.
There'll always be some changes within it, but you'll also see that there's a similarity in it, like, you know, and people will go back and they'll reminisce about 20 years ago. That seems to be very common. Everything like music. People will pull out their collection from 20 years ago, and that music you'll see become hip again.
Yeah, the retro fashion.
Exactly. And it always goes back, 20 years? It just seems to be common. Now, that's just one cycle. There are many different interwoven cycles to this, which makes it a little more complex. But it's still cycles and circles, like the native medicine wheel. They call it the sacred hoop.
The ancient symbol for the earth itself, which is a circle with a cross in it. You know, like that got turned into various other religious symbology. But
this is the thing too. Everybody wants to put all these symbols and say that just because you use this symbol, you must be the Illuminati. Now, here's what people have to understand: these symbols are just. They have meanings on an esoteric level. They were usurped by groups that found these esoteric truths in some cases, and they built upon them a facade, and they made it work for them, so that it was about them. Again, ego, you were talking about that earlier. Ego came in, and that's what we're really dealing with is a monster. If you really want to break it down, this is the monster of ego versus love, which is other-centered, which is compassionate. Ego wants it all and wants it now. Ego is what well, we're talking Zen on this show. Ego is the thing we're trying to eliminate as much as possible. And people go, oh, well, but I don't want to eliminate my ego. I like my ego. Your ego will be assuaged in the whole.
I do think it is a fair point to say that complete elimination of the ego is, I feel, a step too far, because you are removing the balance by literally almost like cutting off an appendage. We were created and we developed an ego, therefore it's part of us.
Well, we have to define it. I guess I should say unhealthy versus healthy ego. A healthy ego is, for instance, okay, when I do something or I come on and I share something on a show, and somebody will come on a chat when I'm on Freedom Informant Network, Finn. When people are in the chat room, sometimes people will go, wow, that, really helped me. Or I get a joy that something I did helped someone. And yes, that goes into what would be called the ego, and it makes me feel good for them. But do I do it just for me? No. I'm doing it for them. I'm getting the benefit back in the cycle.
You could more define it as the altruistic ego, or the altruistic aspects of the ego.
My mom asked me once if true altruism was possible, and I said probably not in the human experience until we've become something greater, because within the human experience we still have this id monster.
Yes.
I mean, call it your demon within that just its whole soul. It is there for a reason too, because your survival in this existence depends upon you getting what you need when you need it to some degree. But there's a big difference between what people need and what they want, and they don't necessarily know how to define the difference between those two.
Yes, exactly. We're just coming up to the 30-minute mark, so we continue on.
Let's continue on. We'll put a commercial break in here, or music or something, and we can do, I would say that we should do about an hour.
Okay.
You know, that's a good show, and that gets. I mean, and again, this for you folks out there. I think this is probably less of your common show, more of a discussion forum of two people going through a spiritual experience and trying to relate how they're feeling and what they're going through, and maybe you feel a sense that you're, involved in the same type of experience. We're looking for people of common mind, a one-hearted person. Are we trying to start a cult? Hell no. And we're trying to. If I were to say what I would really like to see, and I feel that my personal goal in seeing is that, or my purpose, is to show people that they are capable of self-leadership once they arrive at the responsibility of self-leadership. Mm-hmm. Most people in today's world, I find, are irresponsible, and I don't mean this, I'm being critical, and I'm not being mean. I'm just saying that even some of the best of us mess up. I know that, but there are some people who just live their life, some of them say the right things, but they don't live the right truth. They don't live their truth. They don't walk their talk. And so I know for me, I've made a commitment to myself that I'm holding myself personally accountable, self-leadership again, of being responsible to walk my talk. Mm-hmm. And it's one could say it's a heavy burden, but see, once you get in the flow, it's not a burden. It becomes just part of what is. And once you can say this is just what is, then you're in the flow and you're comfortable, and that's where I'm arriving at now. That's where finally, after all these years, I'm starting to feel like finally I'm getting in the flow of where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be doing. Is it easy? No. Is it? Does it take a certain amount of tolerance at times? Yes. Does it take a certain amount of sacrifice? Definitely. My time. I mean, we were talking about that just on Finn. I'd put in, if I had worked it from when I started doing my radio show till now, when we're recording this, I would have put in over 13 and a half days of continuous broadcasting. But I do it because I like being there for people, helping people, maybe being a bit of a guide, but only insofar as what I know. I realize that there are things I don't know, and the fun thing about it is that though I might be a teacher in many areas, I'm also big on being a student. Mm-hmm. So I love learning from each and every person. What do you know? Somebody's calling. I'm getting a call on my phone. It's my mom. Hold on a minute. Let me that's how. Mom, can I give you a call back? Okay, I'll call you back in just a few. Bye. Love you. Bye. Yes, my mom. Life goes on. Yeah. Old reality.
Yeah. And that's a little note, I'd say from my own point of view, I feel I agree with everything you said. I've not so much fell into this. I sort of did, but it was also a choice, the intent was there. I try to be very, very careful with my ego and not let things go to my head and constantly remind people, look, I'm just another average guy, I'm not telling you that this is the absolute truth and you must believe everything I say. I just want to share what I've seen, what I've thought about, the perspectives I've looked at things with, and maybe that helps in a co-creative fashion. I'm just trying to do this thing the same as everybody else. We're all trying to exist. It just so happens that I had, from an early age, an inclination to question things like that, like why do we exist in the first place? So yeah, I may have spent a bit more time than most average people on looking at this kind of information and thinking about this kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean I've got all the answers. And like you say, I certainly do not want to be starting a cult and saying, this is the new religion, this is how you reach heaven. Rah. No, not at all. If anything,
we're taught in our culture to be followers. We're not taught to be leaders. And so therefore, I mean, a person comes on who sounds wise and people go, wow, look at this guy. And the next thing you know, you got a cult forming, and this is what I keep telling people, you know, I want you to follow love. I want you to follow wisdom. I want you to follow humor occasionally, but don't follow me. I'm not always entirely sure where I'm going, but I know that I'm headed, at least for me, in the right direction. Now, is that the right direction for you? I can't tell you that. That's not for me to say, and you shouldn't be asking me to lead you.
Exactly.
You should be saying, what can you teach me that I don't know? What wisdom have you acquired in your travels that I can compare mine, that we can find this path that I can start leading myself in the flow, in the right direction, so that we're walking alongside each other. And here comes another call. Yes, it becomes, the minute you start trying to do, let me see what this is. Oh, this is another, hold on, this is another friend, hold on.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of recording a show with a friend, so can I get back to you just real soon? Okay, bye. That was an ex-girlfriend who still I stay in touch with. So
Cool.
I never throw anything away. I really, seriously, that's something that to me is very special too, is that even people who, you know, I've had problems within relationships or whatever, making amends and getting back with those people is so important. I mean, we often get mad at people, we hold grudges, and then we forget that people can change. And this girl I'd lost contact with for a long time until I came up, and then out of the blue, coincidence, yeah, right, I was on the Max, which is our local back and forth system, and got on, and I was standing right next to her. I look over, and there she was, and I was like, whoa, and I hadn't seen her for like maybe 2 years. And when we met, she invited me over, we started talking again, we got along, I apologized for how things had ended, because, you know, everybody, when a relationship ends, it's two people that made the mistake. It's not just one. One may have amplified problems, like oftentimes a man will go out and have a relationship outside of the relationship he was in, but it's not, that usually is not the problem. The problem was that within the relationship that made him feel like he was missing something to go outside the relationship. That wasn't her and my problem, but I'm saying that happens often in relationships, that people they dissolve relationships because they don't have affairs and things because of the fact that they how am I trying to put this?
That they have a overindulgent libido.
Well, that too. Yeah, I guess men just have that. Men are like that anyway. What do we think of sex all the time? But
Well,
then again,
it's another energy thing, isn't it? You know, men are outputters. We put outwards. We project our energy outwards. Whereas
my Kundalini just got erect. Anyway.
Whereas female energy draws in, it encompasses, it enfolds, it. You know, it's like the loving arms of your mother when you're a child. You know, it's that kind of energy. Whereas
that's why I like the idea of, I mean, as much as I don't want to promote either the New Age agenda. There is truth to some of what they're saying, but if you follow another cult, you're just following people. Yes. What I try to say is that, you know, the whole idea of the age of Aquarius, and forget all about the stars and forget all about the technical end of it, and realize that this would be what we want, because the idea was that this is a time that would transition to where the sacred feminine would become more of the dominant. See, we've lived under a sacred masculine type world, and look what's happened. Masculinity tends to be more aggressive. It's warlike. I mean, it's the killer instinct being. I mean, even culturally, if you think about going back in evolution, you had men had to go out and actually kill stuff in order to survive, whereas the women just fixed it. You know, they weren't killers. They were the nurturer, motherer. Well, we've killed enough in our world now. I think it's time for the nurturing mother to get a little bit of applause, and I gladly, believe me, I would much rather be in a world run by women, except for maybe 1 week out of every month. I think we should, maybe that 1 week out of every month that we maybe should reconsider.
Well,
but overall, I'm saying the sacred feminine, that beautiful energy that's nurturing and compassion. We're talking energies now. We're not talking necessarily male, female. It's just looking at it from a a sexualized standpoint. But it's nurturing energy. It is it's what grows. I mean, without women, we wouldn't even be here.
Yeah.
And yet, look at how many men abuse them and talk them down and go ahead.
So you can also argue that the same, vice versa, is the same. You know, without men, we wouldn't be here either, because it takes a seed and an egg. You know, it requires
certainly it's got to be balanced and everything, but I guess what I'm saying is the importance of women is that they are the ones who carry for the longest. Yes, a man planting a seed takes a second. A woman growing that child takes 9 months.
Yep, and it's also a big leap between the simple biology of a sperm and the complex biology of a infant, newborn infant.
And watching what a woman goes through during the birth process, it's I don't think an average man could take it. No, I don't think a man could go through that.
Put it this way, if we did and we could, then it'd be mainstream news constantly, wouldn't it? It'd be like, the biggest birth ever. Watch it on the Olympics this year.
That's true. We would. You are so right. We would. We would talk about, I had a baby who was this big, Wasn't there a South Park episode with Randy with a shit? Very similar, I think. We see everything as sport, don't we?
Yes, because it's that. It links into that, again, the tribalistic, lower sort of emotions of protection and defense and attack and killing what you need to eat and all that kind of stuff. So sports is basically, could get into a massive fucking debate about this. Sports, as far as I'm concerned, is the way the agenda, the machine, whatever you want to describe it as replaced or tried to re-divert the energy, that aggressive male-dominated energy that is the combat of survival in a natural world. If you were going right back to cavemen having to hunt their own food, etc., they've channeled that energy into competitive sports.
I think the first competitive sport was probably clubbing.
Yes.
I think they just got together and they had big sticks. And it was like the big stick game. Everybody got a stick and everybody beat each other up, and the person who won was the one who walked away.
Yep. Again, talking about that sort of dominance of male energy, the ego, what you'd call the id as well, which is just, I think, older terminology for it, isn't it? Means pretty much the same thing. That is very much concerned with just, like you say, your own survival. So the ego is built deliberately to protect itself, to protect its existence. That, given male energy, given male aggressive energy, has been allowed to propagate as being the way to exist. So we end up in this system where we are now, which, my personal point of view, we get into the extremes of the possibilities of that kind of existence. People are becoming so narcissistic to an extent that it's nihilistic. They're quite willing to give up their own existence to put themselves into computers or to transform themselves in some way, to become superhuman or something, to remove themselves from what they once naturally were. And that, to me, is just an extension, an extrapolation of that.
Well, they're trying to create a flow rather than going with a flow.
That's what I was...
They want to dominate the flow.
Leading to was that, like your story earlier about the river being re-diverted, man's attitude is we will contain it and make it do what we want to do. And I say man as in the male of the species is very much that way. It's like, we will build a fence around it. We will build a canal and make the river go this way because we want it to be here. Rather than going with the flow of the natural functionality of the environment, which when you look at most older cultures, you know, the ancient cultures and the original tribes people that are still around, they live very much in balance with their environment because they've learned that if they try to manipulate it too much, it all falls apart and they end up not being able to feed themselves for a year and things like that. So instead, they sort of make that compromise of, okay, I live within the balance of the environment and I get what I need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's true of women, too, if you think about it. The female tends to go, how can I make this work better in the flow it's already in?
Yes.
Because a child, for instance, raising a child, when you're raising a child, you don't want to sit there and totally dominate the child. And ideally, you want to give the child room to develop themselves and guide them so that they don't, like, fall in this pit or put their fingers on the stove. And sometimes you have to let them do it. That's the sad. I mean, I know in raising children, I had a child who, you know, did put her fingers on the stove once, but she found out real quick that you don't do that. And I had told her that, and she believed me on other things after that, too. So it was probably good that I stood back and I said, no, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't. Yeah. And she was trying to, trying to like, I thought she was just teasing me. I didn't think she would actually do it. But then when she finally did, and it freaked me out because I really didn't think she would. I wouldn't have, let her do that otherwise. But it was still, that moment did train into her a moment of understanding why she should believe what I'm saying. And that, I think, is what a person who is a spiritual guide or guru is about, is trying to tell you, not tell you what to do, but to tell you what didn't work for them, or what they saw, or what they've experienced, or what they've learned from other wise people. Whatever happened to the elders? Today's world, we don't have elders anymore.
That's another one of my common topics that I talk about. This goes into things like the deliberate destruction of the normal family unit, the individualization of people and stuff like that. But it is a topic that I try to remind people about, is that why is it that we live now in a society of therapists? It's simply because we have compartmentalized the social job that used to be fulfilled by elders. Years ago, I can remember, my parents would look a bit upset and they'd go to talk to one of their parents, or they'd talk to an older aunt or uncle or something like that. And that's what you did. Whereas now, because the system relies on nice little boxes of economic functionality for each person, for each economic unit, they compartmentalise that kind of social job, social work, social involvement that people have within their community, within what used to be your tribe. So instead, they give it a nice little label and say, you're only allowed to do it if you study this course, which tells you how to do it. Then you get a nice little certificate. And at the end of it, you're the one now that people come to when they have problems to talk to. So they've almost attempting to mechanise something that used to be just a natural process part of the society as we developed.
Well, I've had problems with, I went through a period of, before getting back into my flow, I went through a period of Great Depression, and I literally went and saw a counselor. It was offered to me for free, so I thought, well, I'll go check it out. Now, my problem is I have background in knowledge of psychology and counseling. My parents were studying to be it, and I had an early interest because I love people. So I knew all of these different techniques and stuff that could be used on me. Mm-hmm. The problem is I also knew that they were going to expect me to do all the work. and the problem, I went in for help, kind of, I don't know, I guess I was just looking for somebody to sound off of at the time. But the thing that drove me nuts is, the first time you walk in, they ask, well, what do you want to accomplish here? Okay, now what do you want to do about it? Okay, now what do you get? I realized after about 3 or 4 sessions that really, for the most part, they were just guiding me how to guide myself, which is good, except that I was paying them money to do something that I should be able to do for myself, or with the skills of an elder who is just someone who's been through it. See, I didn't have to go to a professional. I didn't have to spend a whole bunch of money. And in cultures back in the day, you had your medicine people, you know. I mean, you talk about medicine men in Native American culture, which were part of the clan, the elder clan. They were usually the older men within the tribe. See, in our tribes now, they literally teach that when you get to a certain age, you're pretty much, you just don't understand anymore. You don't know the new ways. You don't, and that's a good way, by the way, to gain control of the youth.
Mm-hmm.
Rip their parents apart by saying, look, these old people don't know shit. Then you can come in and say, but we do.
Mm-hmm.
Here, come over to our university. Oh, here's a loan. Now let's get you built up here so that you owe $300,000 or $400,000. And happy graduation. Hope you find a job.
Yep.
You know, and this is happening all over. This happened in Europe. This is, you well know, that was part of what all of that, some of the stuff that was going on in Greece was the cutting of some of these things. Here in America, we've got this problem hanging over the head of students right now who are looking at, first of all, it's high. It's like they have a high expectation of these kids, but there's low opportunity. So these kids come out and they feel like failures because they don't do what, and their parents are sitting there going, well, why aren't you getting a job? And the Republicans are saying, well, why aren't you getting a job? I mean, that seems to be the Republican answer for everything about what's wrong, is that they just need these poor people just need to get a job. And the problem is, many of these Republican people, pardon me for going Republican Democrat here, I've been both, but what I see is that they are the ones, in most cases, a lot of the Republicans own the businesses that are outsourcing all this stuff, and then blaming the people who are the victims. Mm-hmm. And so the people who are being victimized are feeling low about themselves, making themselves even more vulnerable to being manipulated.
Yep.
So to me, it just seems so well orchestrated. I mean, I've read some things that give me to believe that there is a plan, and that it is to gain control. Mm-hmm. It is psychological, spiritual, mental, and physical in nature, so that they gain control of all aspects of your life. And it is through this fear manipulation, this dogmatic adherence to dogma, not true ethical law, but dogma. Most lawyers are in a sense, try to represent yourself in a simple legal case, and if you don't know what you're doing, you'll lose.
To force people into those little boxes, to isolate you more and more as an economic unit and nothing beyond an economic unit.
Just a mere piece of the machine, and we are a piece. The thing is, it's like a remanufacture of what we should be naturally on a different level. It's like I've often said, the occult, when you study the occult, it's really amazing how much truth is in some of the things like what people say the Illuminati have, you know.
Well, again, it's that careful manipulation of information, isn't it? You know, one of my favourite sort of phrases was knowledge is power. Yeah, that works both ways, whichever way you read it. You know, power is knowledge, because the people in power control what knowledge you have access to. Mm-hmm. So the way that this is classical for any sort of dominating hierarchy, you educate the young, the new generation into the way you want them to think. So you are, like a farmer crossbreeding cattle, and then we can link it into all the stuff about eugenics and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. You're deliberately creating the herd that you want. You're trying to perfect your herd. And from that perspective, if you then consider, well, what is it that this style of society that we live in at the moment, what is it going towards when you push it towards that, what they're terming perfection? To me, the only conclusion to come to is you end up as an economic unit and nothing but an economic unit.
Hold on. I'll be right with you, Mom. Still working on my skull here. Talk to you later. Okay, bye. My poor mom. She's just awakening. This is the thing with my mother. She's going through. My father passed on last November, and he was more or less like her protector. He protected her from all of the realities of what was going on in the world. All she got was through talk radio, and she listened to only neoconservative talk radio.
Yeah.
So what's happened is she's now had to unlock her box so that she goes out and looks around. And she thinks, by the way, she's the only one going through this. I keep assuring her that everybody's going through right now some massive changes.
Yeah.
And that that we're all going through self-assessment, that we're all going through what she's going through. It just so happened my father died at the same time all this was going on. To her, it's all very shocking, though, because she was still stuck in the 1950s. Her idea of life was based on an Ozzie and Harriet Nelson. I know the younger people listening have no clue what I'm talking about, but, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver. You can probably see some of the episodes. But in the 1950s, where Dad went to work, he didn't even know what he did. He just came home and put his hat on and said, "Hi, I'm home," and he was Mr. Perfection. It was like Bob from the Church of whatever that is that, has the Bob character. The guy with the pipe. Have you ever seen that? Church of Bob.
Is that Silent Bob? No.
Church of Bob, I think is what it is. You'll have to look it up. I can't remember. They've got an actual... I'll pull it up for you sometime and send you some information on it. But it's making fun of our culture, it's a Western cultural humor that makes fun of that false paradigm that we were given, that we're supposed to be how we were. Because even back in the 1950s, when people were watching and trying to be this white picket fence, family, it really wasn't like us. So they weren't even coming up to the level that it was their perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, my mom is coming right out of the 50s into the 21st century, 22nd. We're in 21st, right?
Yeah.
Tell me I haven't moved in. Is this 21st now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yes, I lost track of time back in 99. Anyway, what decade is this? Anyway, but for me, it's been easier because I've been going through this. I've been trying to tell her about these things along the way, but, obviously she didn't have the worldview. And I have to admit that as I've gotten more active in gaining a worldview, I stayed pretty sheltered myself, and I'm starting to reach out more to get a worldview and see, like, for instance, how is the United States seen by other nations? Yeah, we here in the United States think we're just the supreme beings of all time and space. We're exceptional. We did great things, and if the United States wasn't here, oh my God, what would happen? And the thing is that if we ever were that, which I don't believe we were ever at the level that we were told we were, we're certainly not that now. Mm-hmm. And I have been shocked at how much, I guess in a way it's been shocking for me how much dislike other countries have for America compared to what we're told they feel about us.
Yep.
And I don't blame them. I look at this, I call it the United States of Babylon. Of course, you're in the European Union of Babylon, so I don't know that you got it any better over there.
No, it's no better. It's just as bad.
Yeah, I figured. You guys get it first. You're always the first test before they come over here to the States and start, trying it here.
Yeah, they've had a bit longer to work on the environment in that respect, haven't they? I think it's very arguable, certainly from my opinion anyway, that what used to be the great British Empire, caused just as much the same kind of global effect, and how many nations hated us or must have hated us for what we did to them. And I'm saying we simply because I live in the UK. I didn't actually take part in that. But that.
I hold you responsible. I hold you responsible for the war between Britain and the United States.
It's part of the problem, isn't it? It's still existing in the after effects, the after explosion of the rise and fall of those once great empires. Historians love to romanticize the past and make it all sound lovely and, winners writing the history, all those kind of arguments. We get a very culturally patriotic point of view of the great British Empire, You know, oh, we were so great. We went all across the world bringing civilization to these people and teaching them to speak English and teaching them how to make a proper cup of tea. Now they're civilized.
Show them how to own the tea.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
of course, we over here in America, we just, we got tired of your tea.
Meanwhile, behind the rosy-tinted headlines, the truth of what the empire was actually doing to create that lifestyle, to create that society that they wanted back home in the Great British Empire. You know, it's a classic example of imperial colonialism. If anything, we perfected that style of domination quite successfully, I think. But that, to relate that back to, what you were talking about, isn't it? I've tried to describe this a few times recently in that way of I sort of tried to steer away from the meme of the I'm awake cliche, or somebody who says I'm awakened, I'm an awakened person, and all that kind of stuff.
Like it's just final, like you do it once and you're done?
Yes, exactly. Because, I think certainly from the kind of stuff I've looked at in the past and read about and thought about, etc., you can only really truly say that when you reach enlightenment or ascend or however you want to describe it or perceive it. And in which case, if you have done so, if you have stepped through the doorway into enlightenment, then you wouldn't be coming back.
Oh.
Yeah,
what
exactly.
are you doing here still?
You wouldn't be sitting there telling me this now, would you? So in that respect, it's an ongoing process.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of that process, I feel, it comes from the gradually widening of the blinkers that have been put over your eyes of how the world works and what is reality. That box that has been jammed onto your head by the society you happen to live in, the way the machine has brought you into its reality, its version of the reality. And as you look at more and more different things and you interact with more and more different people, you are willing to at least entertain more and more different thoughts without actually accepting them. Being sovereign to your own sentience, you are reserving the right to what you choose to believe in, etc. But on that process, it is that ever-widening perspective of your horizons, of what is your reality, what are you doing here, what's going on around you. And that process leads you through various levels of as I've often said before, it's very much like the grieving process. You got the denial factor first of, I can't believe they're doing that, I can't believe they do that, it can't be true. Then you get the anger of once that denial starts to fall apart, you want
That's
to
where
do
a lot of
something.
people get stuck.
Yes.
A lot of people get stuck in the anger.
Yeah. Where you want to do something, something must be done about this. And, that quite often leads to the very aggressive outputs of that kind of thought.
That's usually when revolution gets out of hand.
Yes. And then you get to bargaining, where you think that by, trying to persuade the system to change itself, it will change itself. You try and make a deal with it, or maybe you slip back into the matrix because you think, oh, well, I can't change it. I've asked it to, it won't, so therefore I'll just go back to sleep.
Can I get the other pill, please?
Eventually, though, you get to the point where you realise that, and again, this is why I classically use this cliche, and a lot of people whinge and moan about this stuff, but I think, look, why is it cliche? It's cliche because it has a truth in it that rings true for you. It's just that you're fed up of hearing it, and you get to the point of feeling almost guilty because you've heard it so much and not enacted upon it, and that makes you reflect in a transference fashion against the person who's saying it to you. But anyway, let's not...
Which gets back to almost... We've taken around to a circle here because we're almost near the end of the show, I bet. And here we come back to activism, being active.
That cliche is that be the change you want to see.
Yes.
The greatest way to change the machine, if you dislike everything that's happening in the world today, then be the change that you want to see occur.
Absolutely.
that in and of itself, that simple action will cause the machine to fall apart.
And you have, when you go with the flow, you're going with nature, and so it's going. People are afraid sometimes that they're going to break away from the machine. I think that's why people bury their heads. They get so look, this is the way it's supposed to be. No, this is the way you were told it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Now it's time for you to become self-leader and see what it is that you're supposed to be, and only you know that. That's why you can't let priests come in and tell you how to define what the Great Spirit is trying to manifest in you. Mm-hmm. You have to decide for yourself what that is based upon a deep, I think it comes as a deep inner conviction. Some people have visions. I have, but other people have it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
We all, if it points us in the same direction. I know you and I, for instance, we compared notes when we talked that 3-hour conversation we had the other day. It was great.
Yeah.
We decided we had to do this because at least, then people could hear what we were talking about. But it was just getting into that flow is really what I think is essential, and it has to do with being the change you want to see. And I also put into that within that, I use the term love a lot. Now, I don't use it cheaply. To me, love is a very simple word, a very complex thing. It has to do, though, with the idea of compassion, tolerance, understanding, not having to be right, rather standing on righteousness and being the righteousness yourself that you feel is right. Now, if you're living outside of that, that's when they say, Christians call it living in sin. Sin actually means missing the mark. It doesn't mean you're going to hell. As people see it, it's you miss the mark. Like if you shoot an arrow at a target and you miss the mark, that's sin, And so often people get this confused because they're used to the dogmatic control of that word, which we can get more into that sometime on another show where we talk about how the use of words and the changing of words. This would be a good topic, actually.
Mm-hmm.
How people have changed words so that they can control you with them, rather than letting you be that free spirit that you are. And you are a free spirit. That's what freedom's all about. That doesn't mean you go around hurting people and hating on people because, hey, I'm free, I can do what I want. Mm-hmm. No, when you're truly free, you realize, and you're living in that love I'm talking about, you realize that the true freedom is a responsibility. And
you are freely existing within a symbiotic feedback environment. So, yeah, you're free to be aggressive and nasty and horrible if you want, but if you do, that just comes straight back at you. So why would you want to exist that way?
And it damages the whole of the... Imagine it as two machines. One which is life, the life machine. The other one is a mechanized system that just wants you to become a gear and fall into place and doesn't want you to think. One wants you to create and dream and be a co-creator. The other one doesn't want you to have any thoughts other than how many more of these can I make today?
Yep.
And it's your choice. That's really the big choice. That's the way of, Native Americans have it the red way and the black way. And the black way is about that technological man-machine thing, and that leads to death. Mm-hmm. The other way is the red way, and that's to find the flow of nature and of things and move within that and find the way that, because that's where you'll find yourself. Because that's what you're calling, that feeling inside of you that I've got to do this sort of feeling, is calling you to be that part of that thing. That is the good thing. Now, the other part of you that's thinking too much with your head and not enough with your heart is going to lead you astray. Because it'll lead you to follow the system.
I think I mentioned it before when we were talking. I call it my quiet voice because it doesn't actually verbalise. I'm not in a state of schizophrenia hearing voices or anything like that.
Monster.
Although sometimes it seems that way with the conversations I have online, but anyway.
Hey, sometimes God talks through other people to me. I've heard his voice through you.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
We are each other's brothers, and we are also the voice sometimes of the divine for each other.
Yes.
You strengthen me, and I'm here to strengthen you. And that's what it's a healthy codependence.
Yes. Well, we're all part of the same existence, entity, whatever you want to call it, the wholeness that we are part of.
The
You
master
know, as I can't think of the quote exactly, but I'm sure you know the classic Bill Hicks quote. You know, we're all just subjective points of view of the existence, the entirety of the existence experiencing itself. So, it's a very valid point that you can often hear the voice.
It helps if you take some mushrooms, he says. I thought.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah. Mate, that's another subject we could do one night.
Well, it's shifting your paradigm.
Yes.
There are drug addicts, and then there are people who use things to shift their paradigm briefly so they can come back and look at reality once they've been there. But if you stay in that state, there's where your problem lies. We're probably out of time, huh?
Well, we're well over the hour now. An hour and 9 minutes.
I guess we'll have to edit.
Yeah, we possibly could edit a bit out of it.
I don't know. We'll just let it play as it is. I don't, who cares? Why are we subject to time?
Yeah, again, like we were talking about earlier, with the access that the great tool that the internet gives us, while we've still got the ability to access it, we might as well use it. And on there,
how many more weeks is that?
Yeah, it seems that way sometimes at the moment, doesn't it? With all the stuff going on. But hopefully, we keep using it as we can, while we can. We might as well, because
what a good tool.
It's giving us the ability to increase that interactive flow, that co-creation. They could go off in a sidetrack here into all the stuff.
Well, it's the old idea of being the body of God concept. You're a finger, I'm a toe, but together we make the spirit go. There's a poem. Hey, I got to write that one. There's a song.
It's also a tale in Buddhism as well, actually, about touching the leg of the elephant and the trunk of the elephant, and you might only be able to be aware of one part of it, but it's still an elephant. The whole thing's there. It's still an elephant.
And it has the world on its back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's Hindu for those of you who are looking for a religion. Anyway,
personally. Well, I was going to just, maybe we should add, as said as like a warning at the beginning, we will talk about spiritual things, because for myself, I'm a theist. I know Adonis is a theist. Yes. We may differ in our perspectives, but we're both talking around.
And we find amazing unity in our perspectives. That's what I'm finding, is that he says it different, I say it different, but we have the one heart, which is the one unifying feature that you have available too, and we'd like to be one heart with each one of you. All you got to do is make a commitment to say, you know what, I want to be me. That's really what it's about. If they just say, it's not saying, oh, I want to accept this, or I got to take this dogma, or hey, I better do this, or there's some ritual, or I better know the chakras, or I got to learn this system. It's so much just a part of who you are once you ingrain it in you that you don't even need a religion. You just need faith.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I
try. Probably let these guys go who are listening to us, because they're probably all like, "What are these guys talking about?"
They're losing it, man. They must be on the wacky.
We'll be back to watch these loons again next week.
Next week we'll do some, real serious news stuff. Maybe.
Really? Oh no, well, you never know. That's what I love about this free flow. Let's free flow the show, baby. And hey, the other thing too is that we probably could include a few of our friends who think it's along similar lines along the way too, and get them in here and get their thoughts. I know that I'll use her name on Finn is Nun. She just loves you. She wants to swing off your beard, bro. And and I love her. She's a good-hearted person, and she's got a little website too. She's like, well, be sure and post the show over there too. So we'll make sure and get it onto her. Whatever it is, yeah. It's like et cetera and esoterica together. I can't remember how to say it right at the moment. But
esoteric? No, that would just be esoteric.
Are you there? Are you on the site?
I did sign up to it, yes.
Okay, well, it's new. It's just a small one, but it to me it was like a little addendum to Finn because see in Finn we mostly deal with political and things that are I mean I touch on spiritual, but I go with the love thing because that's something that doesn't offend people too much, and maybe sometimes I touch on a little deeper spiritual stuff, but I try to maintain my moon battiness. I'll leave that for here,
Metasoterica.
Metasoteric. Thank you.
Yes.
And she's known as the Rain Whisperer over there, so be sure if you go there to check her out and add her to your list of people who are good people. She's one of those people who have been there for me at Finn when I've been down. She left Finn for a little while, came back, but she stayed in touch with me on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And she just is very much a person who has shown me what I needed, which is just somebody every once in a while to say, yeah, you're doing the right thing. I think you're doing okay. We all need a measure of how we're doing, yes. And I depend on my measure to be other people. Now I'll know I've succeeded at what I'm doing when we've all transformed this society into the loving, kind, and beautiful place that it should be that goes with the flow, baby.
Yes, definitely. That's what we're trying to do with, I feel that's what I'm trying to do for what I'm doing here in the first place, just trying to help in any way I can, to be of service if I can to people who are at least willing to look at that kind of common unity aspect, however they want to try and get their message out there, whether it be through music or through news articles or writing blogs. I think that is one of the biggest things we need to do.
Use your personality type. Everybody's got a personality type, I divide it by the... Have you ever studied personality types in the choleric, phlegmatic, sanguine, melancholy?
Yes.
Well, it's kind of like earth, air, fire, water. It's the same kind of concept, There are 4 divisions of man. I mean, even Native America divided in yellow, black, red, white. It means so much, but it has to do with just and we're all basically mixes of those. So we have a dominant and then a submissive, and that'd be another thing we'll cover on this, I'm sure, is talking about various ways in which we can measure ourselves as individuals, not to label ourselves, not to stick ourselves in a box, but for better self-understanding as to how we fit.
Yeah.
Because that's really what I'm trying to do more, is fit in. I've stepped outside, and I kind of for a while was broadcasting sort of my own little thing, kind of staying away from the social thing. But I've seen more and more now how important it is that I now make this step into really becoming much more connected socially. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad for those people who come and listen, give us a little bit of time to come in here and hear what we have to say and value it. And I hope they value it. Otherwise, at least they can mock it. I don't care, whatever. Sometimes they mock it because they don't understand it. And later on, they go, whoa, I've had the friends who that happened with. They mocked me. And then they came back later and goes, dude, what you were saying about, and I don't even remember what I said to them, but they can always remember right away,
Well,
and they'll tell me what it was.
Hopefully, this, like I've often said on other broadcasts I've done, hopefully can at least nudge a few neurons, maybe spark some thoughts. And that is, to me, that's what co-creativeness is about. You might not necessarily have the skills or talent or whatever to do one thing in particular. Let's say painting. I'm not a great painter. But like yourself said earlier, you're good at talking. I found that the same for myself. I'm good at talking. So
I'm not sure I'm good at it, but I do it a lot. So
well, yeah, maybe that's our ego just telling us we're good at it because we do it so much.
I try not to think of myself. I basically I don't know that I beat myself up. I more or less try to tell myself not to let my ego affect it too much because I'm not here to be a show. I'm here to just do my part. The show comes as my part, but if nobody else listened, if I've at least done my part, then that's all I can do. I can't make people listen to me. Believe me, I've tried. Please listen to me.
Plus, I don't think you should. In that, again, symbiotic relationship of the student and the teacher, the roles constantly revolve around each other. So we can't force people to listen to us, but if they choose to, that's the first move of activism, isn't it? That intent converted into action of, oh, I will listen to that broadcast. Yes, I will listen to what they say.
I've had people come to me and go, dude, I don't get into the whole God thing, but man, some of what you say makes sense. And, you know, that's enough for me.
Yeah.
If half of what I say makes sense and the other half's dribble, I joke around a lot too. I think humor is very important.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
But you know, that's why I try to throw a little humor in. It's madness in a way to some people, but to me, it's like orchestrated madness because I want people to grasp things. So sometimes humor allows people to tear the wall down long enough to see what I'm trying to show them. You know, and there are walls that go up. I mean, you say the word God, and immediately, you know, there you go, boom, big wall, because everybody perceives it from their perspective. I don't know how many people I used to argue with that when I would talk about God, they thought I was seeing it from the Catholic perspective, and I've never been a Catholic.
Yeah,
you know?
It's one of the most abused words in the English language.
That's why I came up with the acronym. God to me is all things of goodness, there's your G, all things of oneness, that's your unity or your O, and then all things of diversity, that's your creativity. So G-O-D, goodness, oneness, diversity. That is God. But God, all of those things need to come under the banner of love, which is the unifying banner that take those three things and make it into God. You know, rather than just three separate things, it becomes one thing. Now, we could get off on all sorts of craziness now. I'm right there where I could do this. I don't want to. We got tons of show material. I know that because there's lots of stuff we can talk about here. We've only touched on some of it and probably gotten off the track. It always did come around, though. It did come around again to the flow. It did come around again to
be water.
Be water, be love, be compassionate, be proactive, be able to stand against tyranny, be ready,
and be part of the flow itself. Allow yourself to swim with the flow.
And enjoy it, because it is enjoyable, and it has its challenges. I'm not going to say that you go through rapids sometimes in the flow. You know, it's like being on a river. There's times where you fall down a waterfall, but thank God the water at the bottom catches you, because water's like that.
Yep. So we wrap it up there?
Let's wrap it up, baby.
Just over an hour and 20 minutes, so I think that's quite a good portion, enough to keep people going for a bit. Maybe they're starting to get fatigued. I'm often accused of putting people to sleep, so.
You're very relaxing. I'll keep them awake. See, he's the Zen, and I'm the ecstatic part. And today I'm a little more zen-y than usual, but that's okay. When I'm around Cookie here, all I can say is it's a blessing to be around him, to spend time speaking with him, and I feel cleansed in some ways through and validated. And that is what I value, I think, in Cookie. And if we could all do that with each other, what a beautiful world this would be. If we stopped trying to be the boss and just started living with each other and understanding each other, and understanding we get times to be the boss and we get times to be the subservient. And boss doesn't mean being bossy, by the way. Boy, I wish I could train a bunch of kids in that. You know, how many of them get into jobs and they think boss means bossy? Anyway, but we're here to serve, so I guess that's what we're doing. I hope you enjoyed our meal. Cookies and King. Sounds like a Chinese restaurant.
In luck.
Welcome to Cookie King today. Cookie King. There we go. We got a line of cookies all ready to go now.
the Ecstatic Zen cookie brand. There you go.
Wait a minute, we have to do this in an Alex Jones fashion. You need these cookies. If you don't have these cookies, when the atmospheric temperature gets to 1,000, you're going to burn.
Here is your crisis supply of cookies.
Right. We're the only ones who have the last remaining portion of the Cookie King cookies, so come and enjoy.
The first 240 customers get a free cookie cutter.
You better be careful, though, because they'll start actually thinking we mean this. And then they'll start sending us money and expecting stuff, you know. We don't mind the money, but please don't expect anything.
Yeah, okay, so I I will press the stop button there.
Love, that is what you are.
Yeah, take care, folks. Keep evolving.
Keep evolving, oh yes. And revolving.
We are flipping the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.
Flip the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.
Flip the pyramid. We aim to see the world as it really is.
Turning that pyramid on its head.
www.flippingthepyramid.co.uk.
Flipping the pyramid.
Flipping the pyramid.
Flippingthepyramid.co.uk.
Flipping the whole paradigm of that hierarchical system on its head.